on to agenda approval. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Wheaton,
Second.
second by Easter to approve the agenda as presented. Anybody have any changes or discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to discussion reports and information items, Fall 2021 update on return to school. Dr. Jeff Ronneberg and Mr. Tony Muir.
Okay, good evening, school board and members of the community. It's great to see so many people here this evening. In many ways, the school year has really already started. We've had our Panther Mentors in action at the high school. Kinder Camp is underway, and yesterday and today, we greeted our new teachers and staff at our new staff welcome. I had a chance to speak with and meet our new staff yesterday, and it was a lot of fun to see the excitement that they bring to the Spring Lake Park schools. They're so excited about their opportunity to be part of this learning community. And while it is unfortunate, no, it really stinks, that we're entering our third school year that's being touched by COVID, it is still going to be a great year. There's going to be exciting learning opportunities with great educators in each of our schools. And I'm excited about kicking off this school year. So with that, kind of moved up how we need to kick this off. So our priority is to keep school open and safe for learning with minimal disruptions to individuals, to our individual students, at the classroom level and school-wide. We're going to be open 5 days a week for in-person learning. There will be no transitions to online or hybrid learning this school year. Our plan is 5 days a week in-person learning. We do have a K-12 online option, Spring Lake Park Schools Online, for those families who choose that. We're asking for enrollments by Sunday, August 29th, so we can finalize the staffing for that programming. And that is for families in each one of our programs. We'll work with families, including the most challenging one to staff right now is our Spanish immersion program, but we're gonna work with families to be sure that we can do that for those families that want that option. So, questions guiding the start of the school year. Given the continued COVID-19 virus activity in our community, we really looked at 3 questions that as an administrative team, as we were working with the school board team to really guide our planning and design. And first and foremost was we asked that question, how might we keep school open with little interruption for individual classroom and school-wide learning? That was most important. We want kids in school, we want kids learning. Secondly, how do we create conditions where people feel safe and the people with varying perspectives have been considered, right? So that we're looking at what are the concerns that we hear, and we heard varying concerns this evening, and how do we balance that? And in addressing these questions, how do we protect the district from liability and balance competing wants and needs? How do we really get to a both-end approach instead of just one thing? So we worked hard in looking at that. And as we did that, we considered guidance from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, which Minnesota Department of Health mirrors. Okay, first off, the general guidance for all, as we've talked with school board members about, was that they wear masks indoors if not vaccinated. Also, the recommendations state that in areas with substantial or high transmission, it's recommended to wear masks indoors regardless of vaccination status. And finally, that masks must be worn on public transportation. So that's part of our plan, is that's just something we have to do. Masks are required on our school buses. Specifically for K-12 guidance, so the other guidance is regardless, it's just anywhere, but within schools, they've masks recommended for all, regardless of vaccination status, and that outdoor masks are generally not needed, but recommended for unvaccinated individuals. So we consider that guidance. As we worked on this, we looked at multiple prototypes. We had really 3 kind of core prototypes, and then off of that, we had another one where we were using the guidance so that we can actually adapt to changing conditions in the community. These included universal masking K-12 to simply strongly recommending at all levels, and then again, that final one where we really used what's happening in our community and looked at that transmission that's happening in the community and within our schools to drive what we might do. So as we looked at those, we considered those options against the guiding questions that I shared at the start of this presentation, and sought to really find that greatest balance. And first and foremost, being able to keep kids in schools. So that base model that as a school board you worked on was really that strongly recommended the use of face masks for students and staff at all levels. So that's the base model that we started with, okay? From there, we want to be able to adapt during times of high transmission, again, either in the community or within our schools. So recognizing that guidance, we said when there's high virus transmission in Anoka County, which is more than 100 cases per 100,000 residents, face masks would be required in all pre-K-6 schools, except when eating or outdoors. And that's due to the students at that level have not been able, they did not have that choice to be vaccinated, like the students in grades 7, 12 have had. When there's high virus transmission in a classroom or school, face masks will be worn in 2 conditions, and this is really working off the influenza-like symptoms. This is a long-standing recommendation that the Minnesota Department of Health has had for schools that we've implemented for years, periodically had to use, and it was part of the COVID recommendations in the statewide state safe learning plan last year, that elementary classrooms with 3 or more people with symptoms consistent with COVID-19, we'd require masks within that classroom, okay? That only got put in place last year. The recommendation was that that school would move to, that classroom would move to online learning for a couple of days. That only happened in a couple of cases last year. This next one, any school with 5% or more people with symptoms consistent with COVID-19, we'd go to school-wide masking at that level. Again, as we look back to last school year, that never kicked in. We never reached 5% of our students within a school having COVID-like symptoms. So we'll knock on wood and hope that we can get through this year without that one kicking in either. But as the numbers go below that high transmission level, we'd assess the trend and we'd return to our base model. This is the COVID-19 face mask decision-making guide and quarantine plan. This provides more detail than what I just went over. Underneath, where it says, as of today in Anoka County, our transmission is high with 165 cases per 100,000. People are used to that 10,000 mark last year per 10,000, which that was 14 days per 10,000. This is 7 days per 100,000. The recommendation, working with a professor at the University of Minnesota, is simply to divide that 100,000 by 5, and you'll get a close approximation to what it would have been with last year's number. So that's what we're doing there. But right now, there's nobody that has, there's the Department of Health, CDC, none of them are using that 14-day 10,000 number as we started the school year last year. The other on the bottom, you can see the school-based indicator.
You mean the current number by 5, not?
Right, the current number by 5. Yep.
Just to clarify.
So a number of 100, that 100 cases per 100,000, that is similar to 20 cases per 10,000 last year with the numbers that we used last year. Okay. So this just summarizes, this will be available online. You can see in that opening paragraph where it's underlines the CDC's county transmission data. Well, we'll provide the number there and we'll update it once a week on Wednesdays, that people will be able to click to that and see directly what how the CDC is reporting that number.
So the current number is roughly equivalent to 33.
33 in the old one, yeah. Okay, so the implementation of a consistent base model and criteria for when we might adapt from the base model best meets our design criteria. It creates the conditions to keep school open with minimal transmission disruptions, and it balances what we're hearing from our community, which we really strove to do. That's what I heard from the school board. We tried to do that. It also, I think, provides clarity for people when we need to dial up or dial down with the masking. It recognizes vaccination as a core component to moving forward in a more normal way. The quarantine plan is required for anyone who tests positive for COVID-19, unvaccinated family members of those who test positive for COVID-19, and close contacts to a positive case who are unvaccinated, unmasked. We will work with families. We want to minimize the length of that. An example would be if after 3 days, because that's when it's most likely to be valid, if 3 days there's a negative test, a student would be able to return to school. So it doesn't have to be 10 or 14 days. So we will work with families on that. Quarantine is not required for close contacts who are vaccinated and do not have symptoms. If they're unvaccinated, but they wore a mask and do not have symptoms, and the person they interacted with was also wearing a mask, and if they've had COVID-19 in the last 90 days and do not have symptoms. So that's would be there, and that's all consistent with recommendations from the Department of Health and CDC. In addition to that, we have the other health and safety measures that we've had in place in the past year. And those are all available online underneath our health and safety plan, so people can read those. So the proposed opening plan, as we have talked and worked on this, is that today we're currently experiencing high transmission of the virus in our community with 165 cases per 100,000 residents. So grades K-6 would start the school year with face masks being required for students and staff except when eating or outdoors. Medical exemptions will be considered on an individual basis. As transmission rates shift below 100, we will return to our base model after pausing to consider trends in order to avoid unnecessary back and forth, but that would be our plan. At 7/12, face masks are strongly recommended and vaccinations are strongly recommended. Face masks are required, as I mentioned earlier, on transportation following those federal requirements. So with that, that's captures the conversations we've had as a school board and administrative team, so we'll open it for discussion.
Okay. I know this is sort of awkward for us with these dividers, but we'll do our best here. So yes, as we have in a lot of other meetings, when we have the action item, we can have discussion, but obviously this is a time to have discussion and ask questions, clarify anything before we vote on it, so. I'll open the floor to that. This is a meeting of the board that we have in the public, so this part of the meeting is just for us. Okay, anybody?
Would you prefer to have discussion before or after the motion in the resolution on the table?
Right. You know, it doesn't matter that much to me. I was thinking we go ahead and do it now since we just had the presentation, and then we can also bring in questions about the presentation as well.
I just have a question regarding transportation.
Yeah.
Where's
Where's that coming from?
In instances where we have kiddos that have exemptions from mask wearing, is alternative transportation provided for them, or does that follow through to busing?
I'll let Mr. Mayor respond to that.
Good evening, board. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Member Wheaton, can you repeat that, please?
Yes. In instances where we have kiddos who have mass exemption letters, will additional transportation be provided for them, or does that exemption follow them onto the school bus as well?
Yes, the exemption would follow them onto transportation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just a point of clarification, I guess, for as people are hearing this stuff for the first time, it's not always super clear. So my understanding is if we have a K-6, if we're in high transmission and K-6 are required to wear masks and there are two students in that classroom together and one of them tests positive, unlike last year, their close contacts would not have to quarantine this year, correct? That's a new CDC.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly right, and that's a carve-out that is just for K-12 schools.
Okay. Just want to mention that because I know that's important for a lot of us making this decision because we all really want to keep kids in school. We kind of heard that loud and clear after last year that most kids do better learning in school. So to the extent we can keep those younger kids in the classroom, we really want to do that. So
I think it's also worth mentioning, we talked about last week, that if the child has had COVID in the last 90 days, they also don't need to quarantine.
Yes, that is correct.
So they're sitting next to a child who gets sick, goes home, gets tested positive, but they've had COVID in the last 90 days, they don't have to quarantine.
That is correct, and
And that's a change as well.
And that is per the MDH decision-making tree.
others? Discussion before we vote? Anybody else?
So this is questions?
Yep, please.
Yeah.
I'll wait until the motion's on the table.
Okay, you want to do it then? Okay, we can do it then too. Okay. Any other questions, and we can discuss more when the motion's on the table? Questions for the presentation?
I
wanna-
do,
Go ahead,
sorry.
please.
No, I do think it's worth noting, because we never have a large audience, that our lack of questions right now, this isn't the first time we've seen it. It isn't the first time we've talked about it. I've had a lot of questions over the last week after the first time we heard about the matrix and the models. So just for your benefit to know that this isn't the first time we're seeing it, we'd ask our questions.
Yeah.
Nope, I've asked my questions.
Yeah. And this information that you're seeing in front of you is also available on the website, just in case you want to refer to it at any time.
What about the questions that aren't on the website?
Yep.
Okay, Marilyn?
And I keep
emphasizing that really our intention is to have schools open,
Right.
that we do not anticipate any closing, that we will deal with this sort of case-by-case, situation-by-situation, but that we do intend that children will be in school.
Yes, that's what we want, definitely. Okay, any other questions, then we can move on to the motion, or the resolution, excuse me. Okay, moving on to action items, fall 2021, school health and safety measures. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Wheaton,
Second.
second by O. To adopt the following resolution, and bear with me, I'm gonna read it, because I know it's important. Whereas Minnesota statute section 123B.09 vests the care, management, and control of independent districts in the school board, and whereas the superintendent of Independent School District 16, hereinafter the superintendent, is responsible for the management of the schools, the administration of all school district policies, and is directly accountable to the school board. And whereas when responsibilities are not specifically prescribed nor school district policy applicable, the superintendent shall use personal and professional judgment, subject to review by the school board, pursuant to School District Policy 302. And whereas the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and the Minnesota Department of Health, MDH, have determined that the COVID-19 pandemic is currently ongoing and may remain ongoing for an unknown time. And whereas the Minnesota Department of Education, MDE, has issued and may continue to issue written guidance for Minnesota schools on educational issues related to COVID-19. And whereas the MDH has issued and may continue to issue written guidance for Minnesota schools on public health issues related to COVID-19. And whereas the superintendent and the administration of the school district have conferred with the school board regarding COVID-19 health and safety measures, the current CDC, MDE, and MDH requirements for each and other relevant information. Now therefore be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District number 16 as follows. Section 1, the superintendent is hereby directed to implement the Spring Lake Park Schools Face Mask Decision-Making Guide and Quarantine Plan. This plan describes a face mask-based plan that strongly recommends masks be worn by all students and staff, regardless of vaccination status, and adapts masking practices during times of high COVID-19 transmission. Section 2, the superintendent is hereby directed to implement the following plan for face coverings to open the 2021-2022 school year. Based on current levels of high transmission in Anoka County, all staff, students, and visitors in pre-K through 6 programs are required to wear face coverings when they are in a school building, unless or until this plan is modified pursuant to Spring Lake Park Schools Face Mask Decision-Making Guide and Quarantine Plan. Section 3, the superintendent will provide regular updates to the school board regarding the school district's efforts to implement COVID-19 related educational and public health guidance issued by the MDE and MDH respectively. Okay, sorry, that was long. Okay, any other discussion on that resolution?
Sure. I just have a few comments before we vote. First of all, I'd like to thank the public for coming out. And for those who spoke, thank you. For those who just came and didn't speak, thank you. For those of you that emailed but didn't come tonight or have reached out to me personally over the last couple weeks, thank you to all. Thank you to all of you as well. Sorry. It's my mic. Oh, there we go. I was just thanking you guys, so we'll skip that part again. I'd also like to thank the board and our administrative team here. It's been kind of a hard process, and I think we've gone about it in a professional way where we've all brought our input and our opinions to the process, and they were taken into consideration. And so, where we've had disagreements, I think they've been respectful disagreements. So I appreciate that. I thank all of you for that. During this whole process, I think I've read more studies and analyzed more data than I've ever imagined I would. And one thing I've noticed is that when people with two different opinions on this issue talk about it, whether in person or online, they usually end up in an argument, and oftentimes they end up questioning each other's motives. And then at the conclusion of that argument, I've not seen a single example where somebody's changed their mind. So I'm not going to focus on those issues tonight with my comments, but I just wanted people to know that I've read the emails and the studies and the data, but that's not going to be the focus of my comments tonight. My hope is that our community is we don't assume bad motives on behalf of people we don't agree with, and we acknowledge that people on both sides of this issue have good motives and are looking out for the best interests, the education and well-being of our children. And we've been out at this now for about 1.5 years, and there certainly is no shortage of information out there for people to gather, assess, and make decisions that's right for their family's specific situation. In reading the dozens of emails we've received, and in talking to many people out in the community in the last couple weeks, it has become abundantly clear to me that people interpret that information very, very differently. And it's also clear that people have a wide range of risk assessment when it comes to their families. So there are families who are ready to resume normal daily activity with minimal or no restrictions. There are families that are much, much more cautious than that. And there are families that fall somewhere in between those two. So, not every family is going to resume normal day-to-day life at the same time and in the same ways. And I personally don't think our role is to make this decision for every family. I think our role is to support all of our families. So for me, the policy that best achieves that is the one we currently have in place, that provides families with the information and the recommendations, and then allows each family to make the choice that works best for their family. And I believe that our current policy does that. I think we should support a family's decision to mask or not mask for in-person learning, and we should provide as robust of an online learning experience as we possibly can. But I do support our current policy. Therefore, I will be voting no on this resolution in order to keep our current guidelines in place. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody else? Next?
I'll talk. I mean, to me, to me, it's all about making sure that we remove all impediments to getting kids in the classroom, as we've said a few times tonight. We had a lot of kids there last year. We didn't have that opportunity. So we're in a much better place. It's unfortunate. I think the masks seem to be becoming that impediment. But I also think that, and the last thing I want to do is put a mask mandate in place. I don't want to do that. But I also understand that there's a significant segment of our population, many of which we serve, the K through 6 students, those under 12, that don't have access to the vaccine that I do, and that many of us, all of us growing up have access to. And last year, when we didn't have that access, we all had to wear masks. So I think it's prudent this is a very well thought out approach. I think it targets those areas that really, where there's the vulnerability, but it doesn't over encumber the rest of us. And that's why I'm going to vote yes.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I've
Really?
heard that a dilemma is a problem which has no apparent answer. And I think that's the situation that we're in. I mean, I think that by what folks have said tonight, we're going to make half of you happy and half of you very unhappy. But I must tell you my personal story. Just prior to the availability of the vaccine, my oldest son and his daughter both had COVID-19. He was out of work for very nearly a month. His daughter, who of course is much younger, recovered better, but they still both have lasting after effects of this. So I am inclined to vote yes on this resolution if we can prevent even one child from becoming sick. I think it's worth the effort, and hopefully the number of cases will go down and we won't be in this situation that we currently are.
Thank you. Anybody else?
This is not an easy issue. Just in all three of these responses, I hear things that I can understand and relate to. I feel very strongly that parents should be able to choose if their child wears a mask to school or not. I do feel that they can be a distraction, a discipline issue as well. I didn't want our teachers being burdened with the responsibility of policing masks again this year, during a year when we should be excited to get back to learning, which I think everybody is. A mom just called me today, telling a story about kindergartners who have some speech issues, and just in pondering even that story makes me sad, because I want the kindergartners, all of our youngest learners, to be able to see their teachers this year. I want them to be able to see their friends. My opinions of the efficacy of masks aside, I still want the parents to be able to choose. Last week when we had our meetings and we were looking over all of this information, as Amy said, this is not the first time we've seen all of this. The one thing I was really hoping for was to get some sort of criteria for evaluation for when the K-6 students could have the masks recommended instead of required. Would it look like the end of the first month? Might it look like the end of the first trimester? We are in this period of high transmission, and as much as I would like to keep the mandate as it stands right now, where everybody is allowed to choose, that's not on the table for a vote tonight. There's a different choice that's on the table for a vote. If that was the choice for voting, I would vote yes, because I would like to keep what we have, but that's not actually what the choice is. So then it becomes, how can we find something that, as one of these slides says, finds a balance for all the families, which I think is really important too, regardless of what I personally think. So with that being said, I know I speak for everyone on the board when I say that we did keep all the students and all the teachers' best interest in the forefront of our minds during all these conversations. I don't think this is a perfect plan, but I don't think any of them are. After, as Michael said, dozens of emails, lots of conversations that we've had, text messages going back and forth, asking questions. While I don't agree with the choice, I can support a choice where I feel like everyone feels their voices are heard. Whether or not I agree with it is irrelevant in this situation. I feel that I feel like it's important for everybody to have their voice heard. I still feel that the mask wearing should be a decision best left up to the parents, but this is a compromise because ultimately we want the students in school 5 days a week. I really feel strongly about that as I backed up the last couple days and tried to figure out what my priority was. It's keeping kids in school 5 days a week, not quarantining for days on end every time somebody sitting next to them got sick. That's not a healthy way to start school either. So if the choice is have the students wear a mask in K-6 while the transmission rate is high, as a trade-off to keeping the kids in school the most that we can, while hopefully finding a plan that everybody can find peace with, then I can get on board with that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody want to say anything?
I was going to ask Amy if she wanted to say anything.
I'm good.
Okay. Sure. I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you for your time, and thank you for, as Michael had said, for all the emails, for those who have reached out to me personally, and those who have reached out to the board. Thank you. It's always a pleasure for us on the board to hear people's different opinions, different concerns. And this one, I will say, has probably been one of the toughest ones since I've been on the board. I think Amy said earlier, probably 50 emails. I think she was being quite conservative in that
I think she
estimate.
said 50 today.
Maybe that was just today, but if I was to do a count, we probably heard from 100+ parents and community members who are concerned about our current policy and where we're going regarding masking. I will also say that for most of the board members, this has been a difficult discussion. I myself probably haven't slept a decent night for over a week, and I think others have probably experienced something similar because we care about your kids that much. And we want to make sure we're making the right decision and we're moving in the right direction. I would say with this COVID, we didn't wish this on anyone, and we wish it would go away as quickly as possible. But given the cards that we've been given, I would say that what the administration, and I have to give them credit for an extreme amount of work that they have put into this, the constant phone calls and follow-up work. It seems like we go back and forth. That's because they're going back and forth because the information they're receiving is back and forth. So they're just as frustrated as we are and as you are, because it seems like the information shifts like the wind. With that said, and what we've laid out as our guiding principles for this, I think this is a good compromise between a good compromise of all the information we've received, of all the concerns, of all of the thoughts towards masking. This isn't a forever thing. This is not forever. We definitely have a clear direction and approach. There are other districts who are taking a hard line on this. We're using a matrix, so we understand once we get out of that high transmittable period, we go back to strongly recommended masking. So we have a path forward to giving parents that choice. We have that path, and I think that is a good compromise. And I'll share, I just dropped my daughter off to college in Illinois over the weekend. And in Illinois, they don't have this option. The schools there, if they do not adopt a mask mandate, the Department of Education in Illinois will not recognize that school's graduating class. That's how far they've gone to the other side. So to me, I think this is a great compromise. I think, is everybody gonna be happy? No, not everybody's gonna be happy. And we would love nothing more than to try and make everyone happy. But I think this is a good compromise, and I think it's a good path forward for the district.
Thank you. Okay. Amy, last chance. You want to say anything before I speak? Okay. I just want to say one more time, thank you. I mentioned this in the beginning when there were fewer people here. The reason, however you feel about this issue, the reason we do what we do is because we care about every kid in this district, and I know that you do too. That's why you're here, is because you care about all the kids in the district.
We're gonna follow the money.
I want to say that nobody wants a mask mandate. It's nobody's preference, and believe me, particularly if you serve on a school board, you don't want to have to deal with this. But I will say that I feel a very strong duty to keep kids in school, and I feel a very strong duty to protect kids. And kids under the age of 12 can't get a vaccine. It's that simple. So I actually feel a duty to protect kids in grades 7, 12, but they do have the ability to have a vaccine, and as everyone has mentioned, we've worked hard to come to a place, and sometimes as a leader, you have to work hard to come to a place where everybody can agree and you do your best to get there. So I will be voting yes because I feel a duty to protect kids who can't be vaccinated. So I think that's everybody's had a chance to speak. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add before we vote? Okay. Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kroon,
No.
Mr. Strobel,
Yes?
Ms. Bowe,
Yes.
Ms. Forsberg,
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton, yes. Mr. Easter,
Yes.
Ms. Hennen.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Okay, we will move on to adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
So moved.
Motion by Forsberg,
Second.
second by Wheaton. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion passes. We are in adjournment at 7:50. Thank you again to everybody who's here tonight.
Thank you.